Welcome to the Your Next Move podcast with me, Kimberly B. Cummings. Today, I am very excited. We have a special guest, Adrien Odate. He is a professional coach, and not just any coach. I've seen Adrien in action. I think why I wanted him to come on is because I saw him actually go into coaching mode during a conversation when we were chilling, and I was like, oh, this is what I do? Like, I like this. Like, this is the mood just kind of changed. So he's been doing this for 16 years as a fitness professional and professional development coach. And I think if anyone is into fitness and personal and professional development, you can see where there's so much intersection between mastering your mind and mastering your body. He's done all the things. He talks about verbal and nonverbal communication, public speaking, high-level listening, which you all know we need to work on, behavior modification. Plus, he's an entertainer, musician. Like, I don't know what he does not do. Like, that's where we are right now. And if you heard him before him, well, you all didn't get to hear him, but he turned his voice on. So y'all listen close because he's going to turn it on in just a minute. Welcome so much.
Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate you for having me on the show.
You hear that voice? You hear it? You hear it? So
you sounding real good out here. I appreciate you.
Not a problem. Not a problem. So when we talk about coaching, in a last episode, I talked about personal and professional development and investing in yourself. But I think in the workplace, when we talk about needing coaching, people assume that you have to be struggling.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Like, you have to be struggling in some capacity?
I always compare it to being an athlete, right? Because that's a lot of where my start came from.
Okay.
If the top athletes in the world have coaches to help them like really optimize their skills, why would anyone not need a coach, right? Like,
that's fair.
It doesn't mean that you're struggling. You can be one of the best players in the world. You still have a coach that gets you to optimize what you're able to do. So, every and anybody can benefit from coaching. That's how I view it.
And in the workplace, one of my pet peeves is that people overinvest in their senior leadership.
Yeah.
They wait for you to become this VP, this president, this head, but the lower level or parts of the organization, especially women and people of color, don't have access to this.
Yeah. I've noticed the same.
Do you work with clients like that span all of it?
Yeah. You know what's interesting is I think I really started to hone in on my coaching while I was a manager.
Okay.
Right. And I started recognizing that I could sit here and be somebody's boss or I could be their coach. Right. And the key was I don't want to be anybody's boss. They look at you like you're a problem every time you walk into the room, right?
Yep.
But if you're their coach, they look at you as an opportunity every time you walk into the room, right? Like, you're just trying to get the most out of me as a player, right? And so once I started recognizing that, I would bring in employees who were coming right out of college.
Got it.
And they were coming into the industry, specifically as trainers. And they didn't know exactly what to expect, what to do. And they couldn't even recognize the skills they had that were really going to help them be successful.
Got it.
And so it gave me an opportunity early to identify that and then groom some of them into being future leaders in the organization. So it was a no-brainer for me after that point.
I love that. I think when I'm in the workplace and I'm managing teams, the way I explain it is that when you come into a job, my job is to teach you how to do that job.
Yes.
Once you do that job, then I can coach you. I can coach you on how you approach it, on developing your own skill set, making sure you can get to the next level. But I need you to do your job first. Because you ain't going to get a coach. You're going to get a boss, and you're not going to like her. You are not going to like her until you do your job correctly.
Yeah.
How did you even get into doing this coaching?
It's funny. Recently I've had to really hone in and zone in on why am I doing this, right? And I've been doing it my whole life. I was just one of that. When you're that friend that everyone comes to.
When you got a problem?
Yeah. So I was doing that, and I kept realizing that most of the time, all I was doing was asking them questions.
Got it.
Just helping them figure out where they were at, right? Because I could give you my opinion about something, but it doesn't matter. It's not my problem. It's yours, right? So they would come to me and they'd be like, hey, my boyfriend is, or, my boss don't treat me the way I want to. And I'd be like, all right, well, then talk to me. Let me know what's going on so I can get a better idea of what the story is so we can figure out a solution. Because otherwise, what we doing? We just talk in circles, And so I think once I started identifying that more and more throughout my career, it became a no-brainer. I just was like, oh, this is just what I do. This is who I am. It's not my job anymore. It's just what I do, how I exist. And that's probably why when we were sitting there that day and that happened, it just felt natural.
I was like, oh, I see the turn. I see the turn. My master's is in counseling, and what I call is solution-focused therapy. That's essentially what it is. When you're coaching, you don't want to call coaching therapy because that's a whole different lens, but it's a solution-focused version. When you're coaching, it's to maximize the result, to get to the result. You can explore the feelings a little bit, but the goal is to get you to take action.
Right.
So knowing that if coaching is to help you take action, why do you think that companies don't offer it as much to their employees?
I think we haven't seen enough emphasis on soft skills. right?
Got it.
So a lot of companies want to see results. They want to see revenue increase. They want to see that P&L change, right? But they don't necessarily want to, they don't recognize the importance of someone speaking to someone nicely. The human interaction.
Being a decent human being?
Yeah. You know, when I was in college, I studied organizational psych, right?
Got it.
And so the question is always like, why am I here with a bunch of other people in this particular company? And then what does that company want to accomplish, and how do I align with that company, right? And so if more companies started to look at their employees as assets instead of liabilities, which is what they often do, you would have a different perspective, I think, on the advantage and benefits of giving them that coaching, you know? But until they, and we're seeing a change in the culture.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's starting to shift, but that wasn't the case, you know? And you're talking about right now, you know, I've been in it near 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, towards the last 5, maybe, we're starting to see that turn. So I think it's happening, and I think it's why it's giving me opportunities to do the work I do.
I feel like I didn't really learn about coaching until I got more into the entrepreneurial space. Yeah. I think when we talk about masterminds, professional coaches, I knew about it from a trainer perspective. You could always get like a fitness coach, like a personal trainer. Right. But in terms of what different types of masterminds there are, there's coaches for mindset, for leadership. Like there's a coach for literally anything that you'd like to do in this world. You can get someone to do one-on-one. And the past, I talked a lot about conferences, but I think having that one-on-one engagement or small group is really, really clutch.
Yeah.
So if someone is looking, if they have a gap in their life, a gap in their career, and they want to know, how do I identify a coach and know if it's right for me? What advice would you give them?
Oh, man. It's interesting because I think there's so many different types of coaches, coaching types, styles. You really have to figure out like where you're trying to go, right? I think if you can't figure out what your end game is, the coach on the other side can't do but so much, right? But there's something to be said about, are you looking specifically to focus on your wellness?
Yeah.
If that's so, then you'll focus on that. And wellness can include anything from weight loss to just changing lifestyle, what have you. So you just really have to zone in on what you want to do. Now, I say that, but I also recognize how hard it is for people to identify that. And a lot of the time, you know, I'll start coaching with someone, and then I'll refer them to another coach. Right? Because the specialty that they're looking for in that particular area, somebody else might be better at it than I am. I'm good at helping people identify the end game.
Clarity.
Yeah.
I think it's a two-way relationship too. I think when we talk about coaching styles, how I coach is going to be different from how you coach. Yeah. And that's going to give the client a different result. I know for me, for personal training, I always say that I need a coach who I have to know that you care about me.
Yeah.
If you're just going to yell at me and tell me to do some burpees, I'm not coming back.
Right.
I will pay your invoice and still not come back.
Right.
Because I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel comfortable. In business, I need someone who helps push the vulnerability, helps push those things so I can actually get to the bottom. Like there's this quote on Instagram the other day where someone was talking about therapy, and it's like, oh my gosh, I made so much progress in therapy, and I'm still shocked at how much I didn't tell my therapist.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not the way it's supposed to go.
Right. You know, I think sometimes what I've noticed too with the coaching is that people can think that coaching is therapy.
But it's not.
And you got to really remind them real fast. I'm like, hey, man, I didn't come here to be a therapist. One, because I can't carry that.
Yep.
Right? That's not my burden.
Yep.
But, you know, I think there is a lot to be said about allowing some vulnerability in that space, trusting somebody else to be able to guide you through the process. But, you know, the coaching space, I think, is so interesting, too, because you don't have, there's no standard.
None.
Right? It's the Wild West.
Very unregulated.
Oh, yeah, highly.
Yeah.
Highly unregulated. So, you know, in this, it's a great opportunity for people who are looking to explore, but it could also be a dangerous space for people who are looking to take advantage of people. So I think it's important for people to use their wherewithal when it's time to pick that coach.
So we talked about finding the right coach for you. So what type of coaching style do you need? What type of relationship do you want to have? You also touched upon something important, that as a coach, you have to determine if you want to work with that client. Because sometimes it doesn't work. And I think people don't think about it that way. Like I always say, I never want to coach someone who I don't like. Like we don't have to be best friends, but I don't want to be going to your call like, yeah, I am not ready to talk to you because I don't like it. But I think one of the things I want to switch gears to is talking about behavior modification. Because coaching is there to help you modify your behaviors, to improve your behaviors. So I'd love for you to make this tangible for us. So what type of behaviors do you feel that coaching, especially in the personal and professional space, do you feel like coaching helps you modify?
The process of like making choices, like literally the method that you, or your process that you use for deciphering, I'm going to do this versus do that, right?
Okay.
And so being able to go through the checks and balances in your mind of, if I do this, there's a benefit and there's an immediate benefit to me, or there's a disadvantage to me, right?
Got it.
And so helping people identify that is crucial, right? Because sometimes you'll start to make a choice, and that behavior, you've already seen it, you've already done it, and you've kept repeating it. And so you need someone to remind you, hey, you've done this about 4 or 5 times, right? And those 4 or 5 times, what was the end result?
You didn't like it, did you?
Right.
So let's change it.
Right. A lot of times for me as a coach, what I end up doing to people is saying, listen, I didn't come to you, you came to me. One. Secondly, because you kept doing something that didn't work for you. And so, because the hardest thing is to get people to change their behavior.
Yeah.
So you're like, you've done this by yourself. It didn't work.
It's uncomfortable.
Right. So now let's try something different, right? And to get people to do something different, to change, is so hard because of the fear. So a good portion of that is, can we face the fear of why you're not changing this behavior? What's the origin of that behavior? And then now saying that behavior no longer serves me. So now let's make a change, right? So you have to, you got to build the trust to make them change that behavior. And that's usually the hard part. A lot of trainers and coaches will try to get someone to just make a change because I said so. And
that's not enough.
No, I'm a parent, so I know how that works. Yeah. You tell your kid, hey, do that because I said so. They're going to only do that when you're in front of them. Yeah. The change I need you to take is going to require you to do that when I'm not there.
And understand the benefit. I think one of the pieces of feedback that I feel like a lot of professionals, especially people of color, need is thinking strategically in the workplace. That's probably one of the biggest things that I hear people say is that they didn't get promoted because their boss said, you don't know how to think strategically. And people are like, I don't know what that is. Yeah. I don't know how to think strategically. And I think coaches, that's an area that I've personally worked on, is how can I see not only what's in front of me, but the projected outcomes. Right. How can I see what would happen if I did A versus B versus C? And sometimes you need that unbiased third party in a safe place. And that's what coaching can do for you.
Right. I had a recent conversation with a client around the idea of, do you know what your job is? Right. They got hired to be a middle manager. And I had to tell them, I'm like, you're no longer us, you're them. Yeah. Right. And they didn't understand that concept. They were like, what do you mean? I was like, you're still talking like the company is doing this and that to me. No. Like, you are now the company. Yes. They put you in a spot to be the voice that bridges from them to the people who you manage. So you got to change your approach. And they were still on some hourly talk. And I was like, no. They pay you how many figures?
How many?
6 plus?
Oh, you different now.
Yeah. You got this messed up. They're not sitting here to hear you complain. They don't want you to give them solutions. So now that changes things, because now that you have to really look at yourself and say, wow, I was getting tight with the company because they were telling me to do my job. And I've had to have that conversation with this person a couple of times as I coach them. And I'm like, hey, you mad about what? Them giving you, you doing the job that they pay you to do? You got to fix that. You got to change your mindset around that. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle because we're not always aware of what it means when we make that shift, when we now go into leadership, right? The responsibility that comes on there, it's not about you anymore. It's about the bigger picture. So, it's a process.
And that transition is so pivotal. I think the way that one of my coaches explained it to me is that you can no longer be at the water cooler. Yeah, man. You can't be there anymore. It's like before you were swimming in the little pond out back. Yeah. And the pond was fine. However, you have now moved to a lake, if not an ocean. Don't be going, why are you going back to the pond? For what? You want to be in the pond? It's safe. You can stay in the pond. But if you want to rise and make more money, you got to go to the land of the milk and honey and like to swim in the ocean. Right. And I think that transition is so difficult when people don't understand that essentially it's an identity shift, right? It's like, if you think, I do a lot of analogies with dating. It's like when you are single, you do single things. Yes. And then when you are monogamous, things change. Yeah. And then when you get married, things change again. Exactly. And if you're not ready for those things, that's when dissonance occurs. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think because that identity shift, people don't think you really need support in that area. And if you don't have mentors or sponsors or great peers who can literally be like, hey, don't do that mess no more. Yeah. Then you need to get someone who can usher you through that process. And I think sometimes it's so much better with a coach because they're kind of pulled back and have that bird's eye view versus being in the mess with you.
I agree.
So my question for you next, I have a few. What do you feel as a leadership coach is the skill that is most lacking among people you work with?
Ooh, that's a good one. So what are my players lacking the most?
Yep. What is the thing that you're like, yo, I said this 18 times this week. I ain't saying it again.
That they actually have the answer to every problem they ever bring to me.
Ooh.
They always have the answer. There's some weird notion that like when they come to me, I'm gonna do something magical.
Yeah.
Like I'm Oz, And I'm like, nah, man.
Yeah.
I'm just a guy who understands how to listen to you and remind you, you know how to shoot a jump shot. Shoot the jump shot, man.
That's self-discovery, like helping them get to the answer, like the 5 whys. How can you go deeper?
Yes, right.
Got it.
Yeah, you just often find folks who don't realize they'll get into a position at a job, they'll get the role, and then they doubt themselves. They doubt themselves because it's so different than what they were doing before. Yeah. And so you just have to remind them, you know how to do this, right? That's the biggest thing. That's self-confidence that people need to be able to push past those difficult moments, that perseverance. That is what I often find myself having to work them through. It's like, I'm not telling you anything new. You know that you can do this, but you need somebody to remind you, hey, go out there, take the shot. It's cool.
I love that. So now a question I get a lot, because I talk about coaching, people always think like, oh my gosh, like you're talking about it because you want people to coach with you. No, not necessarily.
Right.
Like I'm not necessarily like, not every person is supposed to be my client.
Right.
And I like it that way because I want to be happy coaching. But I think people wonder, if you coach, how do you develop yourself? Like who coaches you?
Oh man, other coaches.
Other coaches?
Yeah.
So what have you gotten coaching on, or what are type of relationships you've looked for?
I've gotten coaching on my patients.
Ooh.
Right?
You're impatient?
I can be. I can be. Oh yeah. Because
so that brow furrow, y'all, like it's serious.
Yeah. You know what it is? When you talk about when a player stops playing and tries to go into being a coach. But if you are playing at a high level, when you're sitting across from a player who's not getting it, but you know that they can, you get frustrated because you're like, yo, you've got the moves, you've got the wherewithal, you've got the mental competencies. But you have to remember that people are at different points in their development. And so as a coach, at times when you're like, I've told you this thing like 7 times, man. Like, why do I have to repeat this? Like, and you got to remember, because they're still learning, they're still growing. And that's why they're here with you, right? And so you have to give them room to grow. They say if you put a plant, in a small pot, right, it's only going to grow as big as that pot. So if I'm helping you grow, I got to make sure that pot is as big as possible. And sometimes I'm the person that I could potentially be the person that's preventing your growth because I'm making the space too small, right?
Got it.
I'm choking you in that space, being like, I need you to get it now, as opposed to saying, okay, you can get it in your time. In the meantime, let's start looking at the things that are going to help you grow, right? And developing that type of patience, being more willing to be part of the process and not immediately going to the solution.
I love that. I think for me, I've realized that just like you said, your clients are looking for you to give the answer. I think I've seen that in myself, is that when I hire someone to coach, I'm looking for them to give me the answer because I lack confidence in making the decision on my own.
Right.
And switching from being in corporate America to running my own company, that's one of the biggest areas that I need to develop.
Right.
I had an issue with one of my clients, and I remember going into the conversation, I was so anxious. In my mind, I was like, oh, I need to call my leader and make sure I flag this. And I was like, what leader?
You are the
I
leader.
was like, what VP do I have? Like, there's no one to slack. There's no one to bail me out of this.
Right.
And I had the answer, but I didn't feel like I had the authority to respond. So my coach had to walk me through that.
Right.
Walk me through how to have this conversation and stand in my confidence. And I realized so much of my coaching is just the coaching that I receive is about having the confidence to make the decision that I know I should already make.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense.
It drives me crazy. I'm like, I pay all this money for someone to help me find what's already inside me, but it helps, and it helps me make more money, so I shall do it.
That's the challenge of our business.
Yes. So I have 2 more questions for you. So the first one, I think there is so much synergy in between mindset and personal professional development coaching and fitness.
Yeah.
So talk about that so my audience can understand. Because I know for me, a lot of the discipline that I've had to work on, I've never had a coach not also talk about personal fitness as well.
So a lot of what I talk about is mind, body, and will alignment, right? And so what that means to me is if I can get your head mentally where it needs to be, then your body will follow, right? That's a natural progression. It requires action to make any change, right? So if I can't get your head in the game, then your body won't follow, right? And so but in order to make that thought become a reality, we have to get you to move, right? And that wellness, when you talk about that body and being in conjunction with that mindset, if your body doesn't have the capacity to do the work,
Yeah.
right? Whether you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering well from whatever you're doing, then it doesn't matter what you think about. Like, you can sit here and think all day about, I want to go, to Mount Everest.
Yeah, you're not going to get there.
It's not going to happen, right? And so your physical well-being, your mental well-being are aligned. They have to be. And so when I started training, a lot of the work was initially about the body, but it really started to shift when I was like, oh, I need to get their heads aligned. But then it became really clear that if like their minds weren't in the game, their body wasn't going to move. So they just became just symbiotic in many ways.
Got it. So my final question for you today, for anyone who's listening, so I'm talking to y'all, anyone who's listening, if you, what's up, y'all? If you've been thinking about wanting a coach, if you are looking for that tangible thing that you can do, what is the advice you would give someone today? Like, what would you give someone besides call you or me? Shameless plug. Yeah. What advice would you give someone who needs to do something right now? They have to move.
Ask themselves the questions that are necessary, and one of them being, am I feeling fulfilled where I'm at right now? Not happy.
Fulfilled.
Because happiness is an emotion like anything. It comes and goes. Mm-hmm. Fulfillment will be there even in the tough moments.
Got it.
You will accept the hardships when it's something that's truly fulfilling, because on the other side you're going to get something beneficial out of it. So am I feeling fulfilled? Do I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be? If you don't, then there's a conversation that needs to be had with someone who can help you get there.
Got to do something.
Yeah.
So if the people are interested in working with you or learning more, where can they go?
Easiest place to actually find me is on my IG. I am Coach AD.
Okay.
You can find me there. I also have coachbyad.com as my website. So either one of the two is good, but I'm on IG all the time.
All right. So Instagram, y'all.
You got to slide in my DMs. What's up?
Sounds like a plan, y'all. So thank you so much for coming on the Your Next Move podcast, AD. I appreciate you. And I hope that y'all now see like the benefits of how important coaching can be. And you know the difference between coaching one-on-one versus going to a conference. There are so many ways to get the development that you need. Until next time, y'all, have a good one. We're going to talk about the relationships you need in the workplace and how to cultivate mentors and sponsors. Now, in my book, I break them down into 4 categories, but sometimes I break it down into 5 if you catch me speaking to you. So the 4 key relationships that you need are peers, coaches and teachers, mentors, and sponsors. And the bonus, sometimes I say colleagues, but we're going to put that into your peers for right now. So let's break them down one by one.